Once again, I am placing another shonen battle anime in the midst of Jujutsu Kaisen's chaotic Shibuya Incident. You guys really enjoyed Chainsaw Man, so in this video we're going to be using Demon Slayer's main cast and sending them knee-deep into the domain of cursed spirits and sorcerers. October 31st will be flipped on its head. Instead of Kenjaku and the Disaster Curses planning to seal Gojo, their target will be head of the Demon Slayer Corps Kagaya Ubuyashiki. Each JJK character will be swapped out for their closest Demon Slayer equivalent, while trying to maintain the integrity of the plot as much as possible. Some things will of course need to be changed for convenience sake, but overall, the point of this video is to discover which profession, Demon Slayer or Jujutsu Sorcerer, is more efficient at handling canon events. The JJK cast failed to save Gojo Satoru, but could the Demon Slayer Corps turn that outcome around and save their beloved leader? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's find out. But most importantly, thank you for watching. October 31st, 7 p.m. on the dot, a curtain with a 400-meter radius totally envelops the city of Shibuya. Innocent civilians trapped inside with no way out. The entire event orchestrated by the curses in control of this Jujutsu terrorism. The crowd in unison repeats, "Bring us Ubuyashiki," as the Demon Slayer Corps split into multiple teams, consisting of various Hashira and their apprentice, Tanjiro and friends, including Nezuko, are allowed first entry into the Veil in order to do reconnaissance and survey the area. Unfortunately for them, thanks to traversal through the Cursed Realm, Kenjaku was already able to abduct Kagaya Ubuyashiki from the safety of his own home, and with little resistance. Ubuyashiki, who was already barely holding on to life as it was, wouldn't really offer much of a fight and be promptly sealed into Prison Realm. No Hashira would be able to predict the usage of such covert sorcery. They'd be powerless to stop him from kidnapping Kagaya. After already accomplishing his goal, Kenjaku's really only starting the Shibuya Incident to keep up appearances for the Disaster Curses and act like he's helping them in their plan to vanquish humanity. In this special case, the Shibuya Incident would be more among the likes of a rescue mission rather than a slowly developing tragedy. While I'm sure this would no doubt affect the way the Demon Slayers would approach Shibuya, for the sake of going through all the same fights, the only real difference I'll be making is the skipping of Gojo vs the Disaster Curse fight, as Ubuyashiki again is already sealed and no one wants to hear me speak on that kind of massacre. With the first squad of Tanjiro and friends jumping in the Veil of Shibuya, let's progress to the first real couple of fights, which are gonna primarily consist of the scouting team's need to extinguish the veils around the city in order to let their reinforcements in and get civilians out. Jogo and Choso will be moved into safe locations until the plot requires it, and maybe we'll have to find something for Hanami to do later, since she's no longer getting cooked by Gojo immediately, which would bring the first canon event of the night to Tanjiro Kamado meeting up with the Grasshopper curse spirit as the Demon Slayer attempts to break the first cursed nail, helping power Shibuya's barrier. Tanjiro vs the Grasshopper curse. After being led to the cursed nail that is powering the curtain around the subway, Tanjiro would instantly encounter the semi-grade 1 curse spirit. And oh boy, what an interesting conversation the two of these clowns would partake in. The problem is, Tanjiro is way too nice to outright upset the Grasshopper and tell the curse he's not really smart. But at the same time, George Washington head-ass Tanjiro could never tell a lie, meaning he would not be able to keep the jig up and outright tell the Grasshopper curse he's smart. But realistically, what would most likely end up being the case is before the Grasshopper curse can even begin its whole shtick, the Demon Slayer has already sprung into action, considering when Yuji walked in on the Grasshopper curse, he was completely devouring a human being. And from that point on, it's no mercy from Tanjiro. This is also the most believable outcome once we get into the power matchup between the two, and it becomes apparent how short this fight would really be. For lack of a better introduction, we'll just rip the band-aid off right now. Some of Demon Slayer's scaling is interesting, to say the least. Compared to some of the higher-end characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer characters really don't push their attack power, base striking strength, or even necessarily durability any further than building level. Some of the best attack feats of the series stemming from Zoakuten, Upper Moon 4 breaking the ground apart or buildings with its giant wood dragons or lightning attacks, and Muzan Kibutsuji, the king of demons, causing massive damage to the buildings in the town he and the remaining Hashira were having their final battle in. And given the fact that the Hashira weren't able to even come close to matching Zoakuten, one of the upper echelon demons by this point in the series in attack power, and by the finale are still unable to eclipse Muzan in strength, that's probably the most generous estimation we can really give them going forward. It makes sense that most Hashira and characters going forward should at least least scale to a bit lower, if not somewhat comparable to this attack power as well, depending on who we're talking about, of course. It would also coincide that the Demon Slayer's durability remains on par with the building power as well, considering these are the maximum scale of attacks they are shown surviving and enduring. That's not really contested, as where Demon Slayer gets really interesting is its speed, as there are plenty of different contradicting feats that occur. Going by Demon Slayer's most generous estimations, Tanjiro and the Hashira should be lightning timers if the fact Mitsuru Kanroji was able to recognize and react to Upper Moon 4 Zoakuten's lightning attacks. And considering she's one of the weaker Hashira, by no means the fastest, this would place most, if not all, the Demon Slayers we'll be discussing today in the realms way above that level of speed. Ironically though, in this very same fight, Mitsuri is caught off guard by an attack consisting of a sound wave, which, if you're not familiar, lightning most certainly moves faster than the speed of sound, and there are also multiple other reasons that would deflate as well as inflate Demon Slayer's speed. So I'm gonna nail down a couple concrete examples to go off of just to find an average speed estimation. 1. Early in the series, Tanjiro reacts and dodges an attack that is said to move at the speed of a tatami drum, or otherwise sound, giving Tanjiro at least speed faster than sound, and considering the demon he's fighting at the time is a demoted lower moon, which would place almost every end of series Demon Slayer indefinitely past that denomination of speed, we also have a character like Muzan in his iconic scene of dismantling the lower moons, being quick enough to lethally wound those present faster than their demon eyes can even see. Just going off of the fact that moving faster than the eye can perceive is to move at hypersonic speeds, which would put Muzan anywhere from Mach 5 to higher, that would calculate as 5 times the speed of sound. Tanjiro and the other Hashira, albeit barely keeping pace, are fighting a weakened Muzan and launching attacks in combat. So we can, at the very least, calculate most top-tier Demon Slayer characters like the Hashira in the realm of hypersonic speed, if we are to consider Muzan as on the upper echelon of that status. If you still want to say the Demon Slayers are faster, that's honestly fine. I wouldn't argue too hard against you, especially when you consider that 90 to 95% of the Jujutsu Kaisen verse isn't really coming anywhere near this level of speed scaling, especially in the Shibuya Incident. When it comes to stacking stats up for Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen, while sorcerers and curses have the advantage in almost every other aspect, speed is something they will almost never win on. At this point in the series, Itadori Yuji is just barely outmaneuvering Choso's piercing blood attack, which is stated to move just faster than the speed of sound. And Itadori Yuji is one of the resident speedsters in his own verse, supposedly comparable to pre-awakened Maki Zenin, who was canonically able to react to and block a shot bullet. Now, this bullet catch is often contested. Even the author himself admits it convolutes things, but if we are to use this calculation, we could absolutely, in the most generous estimation, put high-speed characters like Maki Zenin or Itadori Yuji somewhere in the hypersonic range, considering a bullet from a magnum rifle should go anywhere from between 1.1 to 2.5 Mach speed. The only real characters that would be even awarded this luxury though are Yuji, Maki, Naobito, Toji, Sukuna, and Gojo if we're strictly speaking Shibuya. Again, this is generous estimation. And most other characters are not even close and sitting around that speed of sound level, a mere Mach 1, which to be fair, makes a lot of sense why Maki's bullet catch would be controversial and kind of call into question some of the series scaling, as later on in the series, a human Naoya Zenin is blitzing Itadori Yuji with his own, at this point, lower than Mach 3 speed, as we do get direct confirmation Curse Spirit Naoya is capping at Mach 3 speed, which ironically is also contested, as this estimation would reduce everyone's pre-Shibuya speed immensely, as Mach 3 speed is 2 Machs lower than hypersonic. While you could probably make an argument certain characters are still able to reach hypersonic speeds regardless, let's just hold off on that until it specifically becomes relevant, as right now, again, Mach 1 is the realm where most of the Jujutsu Kaisen opponents that we'll be talking about are going to reside in. In regards to durability and attack strength for Jujutsu Kaisen, even from the series' early stages, most characters have already surpassed Demon Slayer's building level. Cursed spirits of low grade are destroying entire buildings in Volume 0, and special grade finger bearers are able to take control of entire detention centers, making them their innate domains. We also have characters like Ultimate Mechamaru that can launch attacks like Ultimate Cannon that are capable of destroying large blocks of forest, and characters like Panda that can tank these blasts with little to no damage. At the height of the Shibuya Incident, not including a character like Sukuna who outright just breaks the scaling right now, curses like Mahito and Jogo are destroying entire city blocks with meteors or soul attacks. Most opponents the Demon Slayers will be facing are hitting way above above the building level range, as well as enduring attacks at much higher scales. Many of the opponents that Demon Slayers will be facing also will have regeneration abilities. While this isn't anything new to them, it will play a large part in the Demon Slayer's ability to deal damage. Already being at a disadvantage, any injury dealt to a curse or sorcerer with reverse curse technique will immediately just be undone, where Demon Slayers are just normal humans that only have access to total concentration breathing to, at best, stop bleeding from major wounds. As it stands, while Demon Slayer characters are significantly outspeeding most of the Jujutsu Kaisen cast, the sorcerers and curses will not only be very tanky, they'll have a much easier time finishing their foes in 1 or 2 blows. However, with the multitude of ways some of these characters fight, stat advantages are never the end-all be-all. And now we can bring all of that dissection into perspective for the video. As getting back into the case of Tanjiro versus the Grasshopper curse, I will admit I did lie to you, because the stats in this fight are the end-all be-all. The Grasshopper was barely able to keep pace with Itadori Yuji's punching blitz, even with the advantage of having 2 extra arms, a Yuji who, because of the Naoya speed blitz at this point in the series, can't even be placed faster than Mach 3, getting the Grasshopper curse perception blitz by an unforgiving Demon Slayer who will be more pissed than anything at the Grasshopper for eating people. In its fight with Yuji, the Grasshopper at the most was able to break a couple walls. Its secret dick thrust attack didn't even extend fast enough to catch Yuji off guard. The sorcerer also instantly counters the assault by destroying its entire abdomen in 1 punch. Although Itadori hits a lot harder than Tanjiro will, it's nothing one quick Hinakami Kagura dance can't dice up. Tanjiro would instantly sever the cursed nail for the curtain, as well as the Grasshopper's head in 1 swift water-breathing slice. The opening thread being clear from the moment Tanjiro noticed the Grasshopper was too busy eating a human to properly protect the nail anyway. It would try to utter out words like, "But I was smart," or something like that before its head just plops right off. Tanjiro not even dignifying the curse with a second look back as he continues to sniff out for the other veils. After discovering that there's a group of 3 curse users protecting the last couple of curtain nails, Tanjiro would meet up with friends Zenitsu and Inosuke to concoct a plan for splitting the enemies up and taking them down in groups, just as the group did in the original timeline. The Demon Slayers are confident in fighting evil monsters like curse spirits, but are up against actual people this time. This is a new enemy for them, and they want to be cautious, so they decide on an ambush. How do they get to the top of a skyscraper without a flying bird, Shikigami? Well, Zenitsu puts Inosuke and Tanjiro on his back and just thunderclap and flashes repeatedly upwards, scaling the entire building. A good 8 or 12 fold would be enough to get them high up in the air and crash down on the curse users for perfect execution. After the trio ambush the curse users and break off into their own fights, Inosuke would be left alone, fighting against Granny Ogami and her grandson, while Tanjiro and Zenitsu would chase Awasaka Jiro to the streets below. Tanjiro and Zenitsu vs Awasaka Jiro. The Demon Slayers have their very first encounter with the complexities that come with battling a Jujutsu sorcerer, as despite the massive speed advantage both Tanjiro and Zenitsu would have, Zenitsu's thunder breathing attack specifically being almost inescapable for the curse user, both Demon Slayers with their combined attacks, if they refused to let up and comboed Awasaka to oblivion, would normally be more than enough to win against the sorcerer. However, the cheatness of Awasaka's inverse curse technique would rear its head. Even if Awasaka was being spun around like a top around the city from getting hit at every angle, Tanjiro and Zenitsu would eventually realize they're really not getting anywhere with this method. Because the inverse turns strong attacks into weak ones, and vice versa, the Demon Slayers are just wasting their time and exhausting themselves, maybe even opening themselves up to counterattack. This fight lasts truly about as long as it takes the two of them to figure Awasaka's gimmick out, which, to be fair, probably won't be long, as both Tanjiro and Zenitsu are pretty high in battle intelligence. They're also much better at cooperating than a team of Yuji and Megami. Shown in the battle with Daki Upper Moon 6, Zenitsu is easily able to work in tandem with Inosuke against the demon. And there are too many instances of Tanjiro's insane deduction ability, with little to no clues at all, completely deciphering Upper Moon 3 Akaza's entire fighting style and how to outmaneuver it mid-battle. Tanjiro also has access to pseudo-precognition, having instincts that constantly alert him to opponents' weak points. Tanjiro claims claims he can smell openings and what the best move to make is. And training with Yororichi Type 0 also massively boosted Tanjiro's cognitive awareness and adaptability mid-battle, meaning he would eventually realize there were no win conditions and stop to think outside the box. And without even getting into the transparent world, as we'll save that for a more deserving fight, it's not hard to see Tanjiro and Zenitsu figuring out inverse and taking Awasaka down. The old Geether just stands no chance against either of them really, so at the same time, it's a done deal. Inosuke versus Granny Ogami and Grandson. This fight would go much better than the original, the two curse users having less than ideal physical stats for an Inosuke that, although not as fast as end of series Tanjiro or Zenitsu, will at the very least surpass both sorcerers just based on the speed assumptions we can give him from fighting on decent pace with Upper Moon 2 Doma, who should at least be a low hypersonic timer like the rest of the finale cast. The lower attack power of Demon Slayer won't matter much against an elderly woman and someone that couldn't stand against Ino Takuma, who at the very best is on the scales of a semi to low grade 1 sorcerer. Inosuke is also very capable when it comes to reaction time, having similar pseudo precog like Tanjiro. Inosuke's beast-like instincts constantly provide him correct battle information to navigate situations. In my honest opinion as well, beast breathing and Inosuke's gung-ho attitude to jump right into combat, no questions asked, would entice Inosuke to just go right for the kill on sight, the grandson having no choice but to run away with Granny Ogami in hand. But considering they're on top of a building and outsped, that's not gonna work at all. If it weren't for Toji appearing, making the video so much more fun, I would say Inosuke takes Granny and grandson out with no chance or time to pull off the revival. But let's give them the chance to summon Toji. We can change the battle from Inosuke vs fodder to Inosuke vs the ghost of Toji Fushiguro. And this is a fight that requires much more in-depth discussion, starting with Toji specifically, as without a doubt, the first thing that needs to be calculated is Toji's speed compared to the Demon Slayers. Equalizing Toji's physical stats with fully awakened Maki Zenin, that would place Toji in the highest echelon of Jujutsu Kaisen speed, which we did previously generously conclude was low hypersonic range between Mach 5 and Mach 10. This gives Maki the physical feats of both catching the bullet as well as her later actions of outpacing a Mach 3 calculated Curse Naoya. And diverting from Maki for just a moment, if we are to then claim Gojo Satoru, who at his maximum speed is able to surpass Naobito and Naoya, can also warp long distances faster than the eye can see, this would also place Gojo in hypersonic range. Now, Gojo's average combat speed could be argued lower than his warp speed, but if we are considering Gojo vs Sukuna in the estimation, that would put both of these characters fighting on pace with each other at this hypersonic level. And why that's important is because then we actually have to consider and calculate full power Ryomen Sukuna to the high hypersonic range. Because thanks to Sukuna's action of perception blitzing a fully awakened Maki Zenin, if Sukuna is able to move faster than a hypersonic estimated Maki can keep up with, you can argue Sukuna might surpass Mach 10. Though I really hesitate to bring Jujutsu Kaisen any further in speed than that, despite I'm sure a lot of people that will claim certain characters will be able to reach higher than Mach 10 estimation just due to Hajime Kashimo's lightning bolt. However, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and claim no character really has the faster than light feat of fully moving out of the way of the lightning bolt. It's why there's a difference between combat speed and reaction speed. So while a character like Hikari may have been able to notice lightning coming, he was only able to slightly shift his shoulder an inch or two to not immediately lose his head. Similarly to when his automatic reverse curse technique diffused his brain from exploding, which again wouldn't give Hikari's physical body's lightning timing feats anyway. In the anime, Toji was shown reacting to lightning, although it's unclear whether he just endured Nue strikes or got out of the way, which, if we've learned anything from Demon Slayer, does not always mean the verse enters faster than light territory. But I mean, hey, if you do want to consider these top tiers lightning timers or like massively hypersonic, that's on you. You are more than free to do that, as none of that going forward is really going to change the outcomes of the fights, considering we can always find ways to afford that same lightning timing to Demon Slayer if we really truly wanted to. And I mean, in the grand scheme of everything, Toji is realistically the only character in this video any of this crazy talk pertains to. So without getting stun-locked for too long on the topic, it's safe to say whether you consider Toji Zenin in his prime equal to or greater than the awakened Maki Zenin we have in Shinjuku Showdown, we will be estimating Toji's final speed anywhere from Mach 5 to Mach 10 range, which all in all has just been a very long-winded way to say Toji has enough speed to compare with our estimated Demon Slayer speed. Inosuke, at best, reaches that low hypersonic level just based off of his feats against Upper Moon 2, but Inosuke definitely scales lower than characters like Muzan or Tanjiro, who would be on that closer to Mach 10 range of the scale. And considering Toji's attack potency and striking strength based on his performance against Dagon, the man should scale far higher than Demon Slayer's mere building level. Using the information that Playful Cloud is just an extension of the user's actual physical strength, Toji could be scaled to, at the very least, City Block. Toji had the capacity to surpass both the toughest Shikigami and Dagon's domain, as well as Dagon's own durability in order to kill them. We can also confirm this City Block level potency by using a character like Itadori Yuji as a measure, who canonically is also capable of destroying large buildings on his own accord and can leave craters in ceilings just by landing on top of them. So if we are to assume Maki Zenin, the equal to Toji Fushiguro, scales even the least bit higher or equal to Yuji, which, assumed by how Ryomen Sukuna acknowledges Maki is in fact a better Yuji in their short encounter, we can get further proof this estimation of Toji's attack power and striking strength tracks. Again, even if you disagree with the estimates, we can at the very least agree Toji's hitting higher than Demon Slayer's durability level. Toji's own durability should be comparable to City Block as well, the man being capable of surviving getting launched through multiple buildings after tanking a red from Team Gojo. Red should bare minimum be City Block, as it is double the attack power of Gojo's blue attack, which was capable of destroying the entire Jujutsu headquarters. Maki Zenin surviving multiple black flashes from Ryomen Sukuna without getting into it surely surpasses City Block level, considering it would include an exponential growth of 2.5 to full power Sukuna's base striking strength. So yeah, it's debatable if Inosuke would be even able to hurt Toji. Inosuke's biggest feats by the end of the series are being able to parry Upper Moon 2 Doma's attacks, which are generally responsible for Demon Slayer's attacks scaling as high as building level in the first place. So it's pretty easy to tell Toji would, even barehanded, have the complete advantage over Inosuke. And although the latter would put up a much better fight than Ino did, Inosuke just does not have the sauce to damage Toji's insane heavenly restriction body. Inosuke would be sent flying off the tower and landing in the arms of Tanjiro and Zenitsu, same as the original Shibuya timeline. And time will only tell how much more damage Toji can do to the Demon Slayers. In the meantime, in another section of the city, Nezuko Kamado somehow got separated from her brother Tanjiro during the chaos of entering Shibuya. Lost and alone, Nezuko would find herself stumbling upon Haruta Shigemo, who, seeing a young and defenseless cute girl, would no doubt take his opportunity to prey on her. Unfortunately for Haruta, unlike Nobara, Nezuko would actually obliterate this man's whole existence. When sensing danger, especially after achieving her full demon power and conquering the sun, Nezuko would immediately spring into action once she realized Haruta meant her harm. And although Nezuko doesn't want to eat humans, she doesn't necessarily have to kill Haruta and break her rules either. Just, you know, beat Haruta into absolute submission, same as Nanami Kento did in the original timeline. In Demon Slayer, Nezuko doesn't fight as often as everyone else, yet the couple of times she does offer more than enough insight to put her stats far higher than a low-level curse user like Haruta. Nezuko was severely overwhelming Daki, an Upper Moon demon with speed and strength, scaling her to a similar level as the Upper Moon demons and the Hashira, which already elevate Nezuko to the upper echelons of Jujutsu Kaisen speed. Nezuko's attack potency, striking strength, and durability should all be higher as well, granting her the official Demon Slayer building level accolade. Now, the Predator, Haruta Shigemo, on the other hand, has no real physical feats really at all in the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, besides causing a concussion to Nobara, which, to be fair, you, the viewer, could probably do if you tried, so not too impressive. In the anime, Haruta was able to cave in the ceiling, at least during his fight with Nobara, moving fast enough to dodge the latter's cursed nails as well, which, even if we put that in our calculations, don't even begin to put Haruta in the, how should we say, arena. The cursed user's only real saving grace would be his curse technique, which lets him store miracles to save his life up to 6 times. But I saw what Nezuko did to Daki. Nezuko would just kill Haruta 6 times. To be honest, I'm really not even sure how well the miracle technique would fare against full-on decapitation. Don't think there's really any kind of miracle that can save you from that. A real miracle, honestly, would be Haruta just not encountering Nezuko at all. Here, my plans were to have the Hashira begin filtering into Shibuya, as this is where characters like Nanami and now Bito start making waves in the story. The Veils were taken down by Tanjiro and Zenitsu's win over Awasaka, but realistically, Nezuko really doesn't need any help here, so no replacement for Nanami as of now is required. And just so you know, I really struggled finding perfect matches for some of these Jujutsu sorcerers. Some JJK characters are, unique to say the least, so don't get mad at me if some of these character swaps don't make perfect sense. Like, for example, Meimei. There's not really a perfect one-to-one Hashira from Demon Slayer to replace Meimei with, so I opted to go with literally any other trait that might tie the characters together. In this case, I chose being a scary woman, and that scary woman from Demon Slayer was Shinobu Kocho, the insect Hashira and master of wisteria poison, which thematically is a great matchup for the cursed spirit based on the sickness of smallpox. This battle will also serve as the perfect segue into what may be the biggest struggle that the Demon Slayers are going to encounter in Shibuya: domain expansions. Taking into account most Shibuya Incident characters are almost always losing when it comes to speed, Smallpox Curse should be no exception, even if Shinobu is one of the slowest Hashira. Shinobu was getting perception blitzed by Doma, which would place her speed stat even lower than Inosuke. Now, Shinobu was vastly faster than Tanjiro and Zenitsu during her and Gyu's appearance at Mount Nanagumo, meaning Shinobu is by no means slow, at least when compared to the Smallpox deity, who undoubtedly is faster than Piercing Blood. Regardless of the Smallpox Curse having no physical feats, by giving him special grade status, it's assumed he would scale above Demon Slayer's building level, and like the Grasshopper Curse, he would just be too slow to really make good on the advantage. However, an attack that's impossible to miss might fix that issue. Domain expansion: create a barrier that traps your opponent on the inside, and after activation, the domain's innate technique will always hit your opponent without fail. The only escape for domain expansions is to have some sort of domain countermeasure, such as Simple Domain, Hollow Wicker Basket, or Falling Blossom Emotion. And considering the Demon Slayers have 1. Never encountered such a power like domain in their life, and 2. Will have no defense mechanisms put in place to stop the domains, pretty much all of them will have severe issues handling them in the fights to come, and Smallpox Deity vs Shinobu is a great showcase of that. While inside of Smallpox Deity's domain expansion, Shinobu's advantage in speed won't be able to help her in the fight. Not only does the Smallpox Deity canonically always open battle with a domain expansion, meaning Shinobu has little chance for escape, her lack of knowledge on the technique will also fail her. Once she's inside the domain, the Demon Slayer will have no choice but to play by the Smallpox Deity's rules. Now, the Smallpox domain is simple. When the curse drops its fist into its hand, in a blink, a coffin appears around the target. A boulder falls on top of the coffin, intending to crush the victim and lock them even deeper into place, while a timer counts down to 3. Once the process is complete, the target falls deathly ill to the smallpox virus. The biggest issue Meimei had in the canonical Shibuya fight was being unable to break the boulder and then motion into attacking the Smallpox Deity fast enough before the process could restart. Meimei was only able to acquire the win once Wee Wee took attention off of her and gave Meimei enough time to cut off the Smallpox Curse's hands to end the innate technique, following this with a bird strike to seal the deal. An attack that, unfortunately, we still have no real scaling for, but the fact that it was able to one-shot the special grade should at least put it past building level, and it was also something Sukuna felt the need to dodge and not tank damage from, so I think that's another pretty good thing backing it up. Shinobu's challenge with the Curse Spirit will be fairly worse, and not just because she's entering alone. Shinobu canonically has the worst attack potential out of all the Hashira, not even being able to muster enough attack strength to cut through an Upper Moon demon's neck. Shinobu normally makes up for this in having the strongest pierce attacks among the 9 Hashira. However, the position Shinobu is trapped in isn't exactly the best for hitting a stab attack. She will undoubtedly be slower than a character like Meimei in breaking out of the domain's death count. On top of Shinobu's struggle with just breaking out of the boulder, in regards to damage dealing, the Smallpox Deity was able to quickly regenerate limbs after Meimei cut them off, and the curse probably could have continued to heal had it not been hit with such a critical blow and bird strike, neither of which our attack Shinobu would be able to recreate, even with peak thrusting strength. Even worse for Shinobu is the fact that the Smallpox Curse won't fall victim to wisteria poison either, meaning her normal fighting style of taking advantage of durability ignoring attacks don't work in her favor either, and I think that's what really closes the lid on Shinobu vs Smallpox Curse. Shinobu is just at a supreme disadvantage in this fight. Even if Shinobu can break out of the countdown of death, it really doesn't matter because she can't destroy the domain and the countdown, or frankly, even kill the Smallpox curse. Shinobu will eventually get worn down and fall victim to the countdown. The only way Shinobu wins is if you say her Wisteria works against curses, heavily adapting the type of poison she uses before entering Shibuya. But no, using pre-established rules, Shinobu dies, which, damn, even in a completely different series, she can't catch a W. As the crows caw for Shinobu's death again, the Hashira pick up their pace in hopes to find the prison realm containing Ubuyashiki quickly. Tanjiro, who could use his strong sense of smell and direction in order to find his way around Shibuya, would get farther ahead than anybody else in reaching Kenjaku. However, on his descent down, much like Itadori, Tanjiro would encounter Choso. In the case of Tanjiro vs. Choso, unfortunately, it's not looking good for the Elder Death Painting. Choso, at this point in the series, was getting speed blitzed by a human Naoya Zenin, who we've confirmed is slower than his Mach 3 curse counterpart, giving Naoya the benefit of the doubt. Since he's also moving quicker than Shibuya Itadori Yuji, Naoya's speed should cap at the most between Mach 1.5 to Mach 2. And with Choso's fastest attack being piercing blood, we can place Choso's actual combat speed at a generous Mach 1 or below. Now, is this super weird, considering we just previously scaled Yuji in speed closer to pre-awakened Maki's bullet catching feat, and Choso should, for all intents and purposes, be on par with that speed since he can keep up with Yuji in fights? Yes, it is weird, but that's Gege's fault. Don't blame me. Long story short, Choso is still losing significantly in the speed department, no matter what way you look at it, especially against Tanjiro, who is the top of Demon Slayer's verse, just behind Muzan. Choso's blood attacks, thanks to significantly damaging Itadori Yuji, will surely scale high enough to do some real lethal damage to Tanjiro though, but the fluid motions of Tanjiro's water breathing and Hinokami Kagura, combined with the big speed advantage, are the perfect counter for most, if not all, of Choso's offense. Yoruichi, the predecessor of Tanjiro's sun breathing, when fighting Muzan Kibutsuji, made the Demon King burst his body into 1,800 small pieces to try and escape the Demon Slayer. However, even against those odds, Yoruichi was able to swiftly slice over 1,500 of those disembodied parts, quote-unquote, on the spot. We also have similar feats shown by Muichiro, Yoruichi's descendant, when using mist breathing to cut away a Gyoko Upper Moon 5 storm of 1,000 fish. Tanjiro, who scales higher than Muichiro in both strength and speed, and is comparable to, if not slightly lower scaled than Yoruichi, his proficiency with the blade should, without a doubt, counter Supernova or any of Choso's attempts at mid to long range fighting. Choso normally is able to abuse the poison in his blood against enemies he can't pin down, shown in Choso's fight with Naoya, where after luring the Zenin air into a narrow space, Choso conjured a large tidal wave of blood and soaked it into Naoya's clothes to sneak the poison into his body. However, Tanjiro has mastered total concentration breathing, which displays the ability to prolong poison's effects on the body, or even outright diffuse the toxins from Demon Slayers, similar to an advanced reverse curse technique, meaning Choso's poison blood wouldn't debilitate Tanjiro the same way it did Naoya. Choso's durability is the largest issue for Tanjiro to overcome, the death painting surviving 3 and potentially up to 4 critical blows from the likes of Itadori Yuji, a character who we have previously scaled to city block striking strength at the least. Now, it's most likely lower at this point in the story, as Itadori has not been fed 10 more Sukuna fingers that will inevitably power him up before his Mahito fight. This, however, still puts Choso in a position to endure most of Tanjiro's attacks. Flowing Red Scale is a significant boost to Choso's damage tanking, a great defense to outright stop Tanjiro's sword in its tracks. But the major question is, for how long? Tanjiro's endurance is a notable feat that has yet to emerge in discussion. The Demon Slayer was forced to fight at peak condition against Muzan for multiple hours until sundown, without exhausting, and this is directly after having a previous fight with Akaza earlier in the fight. Tanjiro also has canonically trained under harsh conditions for over 7 days with no food, water, or sleep. To be fair to Choso, most characters, especially in the realm of Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya Incident, don't even begin to compare to this kind of stamina unless we're discussing characters like Gojo, making it likely that Tanjiro will come out on top after eventually wearing Choso down in order to make up for his lower attack potency. Choso's entire arsenal of blood manipulation relies on his stock of cursed energy, meaning all of his attacks and defense will slowly begin to lose output over time until they eventually cease altogether, leaving the death painting open for the kill. And after decapitating Choso, Tanjiro would come to understand Choso's ties to his brothers and the humanity within him, getting to know the death painting through the decently difficult fight. As a flashback plays, the Demon Slayer would take pity on Choso, just as Tanjiro has for most of the demons that aren't completely irredeemable. Weird how this happens canonically for both series. Anyway, Tanjiro would have even more of a reason to chase Kenjaku down now. Before, it was just to save Ubuyashiki, but now Tanjiro's making it personal. Before setting off to continue delving deeper into the subway, Tanjiro would take notice that some of Choso's blood got into his wounds. Of course, like I said, poison is nullified by total concentration breathing, so Tanjiro doesn't have time to stop and think about this now. He's gotta keep moving, and so too do we. Next up would be the Dagon fight, and the three Hashira who I've swapped in would be Gyomei, standing in for Nanami, Sanemi Shinazugawa, who is a great, hard to work with Hashira, similar to the drunk Naobito Zenin, and because Maki isn't necessarily grade 1 at this point, I think instead of switching her with Mitsuri, the only other female Hashira, we'll say Kanao Suyori is taking her place, making the all-new matchup Kanao, Sanemi, and Gyomei Himejima versus Disaster Curse of the Sea, Dagon. As the Hashira and Kanao meet up, they take a different path down the lower basements of the subway to meet up with Tanjiro. Their group would stumble upon the cursed womb Dagon, just as the three sorcerers did in the original timeline. Funnily enough, something tells me the first introductions won't go much different either. While Kanao and Gyomei are two reserved individuals like Maki and Nanami, Sanemi is the perfect replacement for Naobito, as his belligerent attitude and willingness to throw hands on sight will for sure carry over. Upon encountering the cursed spirit, it wouldn't surprise me if Sanemi used his advantage in speed to perception blitz and crack Dagon with a pretty strong punch. Nowhere near as powerful as Naobito's, as the old man was able to split one of Dagon's Shikigami with his bare hands, placing him at the very least above Demon Slayer's attack level. Curse Womb Dagon is pretty much defenseless. Sanemi, the Wind Hashira, is also well known for being the fastest Hashira among the starting 9. Without getting into another lengthy rant, it should be abundantly clear the Hashira and Kanao outpaced the Disaster Curses from previous calculations. Sanemi fought, admittedly, a step behind Kokushibo Upper Moon 1, but was still able to effectively avoid and parry Upper Moon 1's moon breathing, which would rank only slightly below Muzan in potency. Dagon's own durability will give him solid defense against Sanemi's attacks though, and with Dagon's curse technique granting him the ability to conjure water from cursed energy, the Disaster Curse can use the water much more effectively to keep Sanemi away or use the water as a shield to block attacks. If Dagon surrounds himself in water defense, which was canonically shown to endure Nanami Kento's 7-3 hits, as well as Maki and Naobito Zenin's base striking strength, the special grade could be completely protected. Being a cursed spirit, Dagon also has high speed regeneration, even if Sanemi does manage to get through Dagon's shields, which is quite possible, considering Naobito was easily able to speed blitz Dagon out of its defensive stance. And honestly, the benefit to Sanemi is that it won't be just him fighting Dagon. Both Gyomei and Kanao, two exceptional demon slayers, will be approaching the situation with him, and we'll discuss how each of them individually interacts with Dagon before letting the fight actually play out. Gyomei Himejima, the strongest Hashira out of the 9, ranks higher than Sanemi in all physical qualities except speed, in which Gyomei only rivals him. Gyomei is able to exceptionally impress Upper Moon 1 and shatter the latter's flesh blade, something none of the other combatants, Sanemi included, could accomplish, making Gyomei capable of surpassing Muzan's large building level durability, which would put Gyomei as the heaviest hitter in the Demon Slayer universe, next to end of series Tanjiro. Gyomei's choice of weapon, being an axe and flail attached to a chain, is able to swiftly attack his opponent from all directions and in multiple locations at once. Although large bodies of water should no doubt dampen and slow Gyomei's attacks, the added flexibility and remaining speed advantage would naturally allow Gyomei to find openings in Dagon, and when awakening to his Demon Slayer mark, unlike the other Hashira, who I have been estimating at Demon Slayer mark just for clarification, gains access to the Transparent World. Through Transparent World, Gyomei gains hypervision that allows him to essentially see through his opponent, and by viewing their complete internal body structure, Gyomei will always know where the best possible places to strike and do the most damage are, giving it much needed edge against the higher durability opponent. Assuming how easily Naobito broke Dagon's defenses with mind-numbing speed, it's not hard to assume Gyomei could recreate that scenario either, similar to Sanemi. And last but not least is Kanao, who although not being Hashira level, ironically enough, scales much higher than her sister Shinobu does in stats, something that Upper Moon 2 Doma even feels the need to comment on in their battle. Kanao was able to cut through Doma's midsection, an Upper Moon 2 demon with durability only surpassed by Muzan and Kokushibo, making her at the very least similar in striking potential potential to Sanemi. All of this combined with her insect-breathing final form, Equinoctial Vermilion Eye, Kanao is able to perceive even attacks from Doma in slow motion, cementing her at the highest speed and reaction calculations Demon Slayer has. Kanao would probably be able to work magic around Dagon, similarly to Sanemi or Gyomei. I'm not even saying Kanao would need the Vermilion Eye, right? I'm just stating it as a simple fact of the matter. None of these opponents are easy for Dagon just because he hits harder, especially when you consider their superior stamina. When all three of these top-tier Demon Slayers move on Dagon all at once, especially while the curse is in his base form, the latter stands no chance. Similar to the original timeline, the only survival option for the Disaster Curse would be Domain Expansion. And once again, we get to see how game-changing a domain can be against the Demon Slayers. Dagon's Domain, Horizon of the Captivating Skanda, creates a large island with oceans surrounding it on all sides. After trapping all three of the Demon Slayers inside its barrier, none of them have any idea as to what's going on. And in that moment, Dagon activates his sure hit effect. Dagon's innate technique, Death Swarm, is an endless stream of invisible Shikigami who only become visible after their teeth have already sunk into you. After constantly reiterating how much higher Jujutsu Kaisen's attack potential is compared to Demon Slayer, I shouldn't have to explain why these man-eating Shikigami would cause more lethal damage to the Demon Slayers than the sorcerers. Dagon's domain expansion attacks should definitely at the very least scale above Demon Slayer's building level, as his base punch was said to almost be able to kill Maki if it landed, who, even pre-awakened, should scale to city block level durability similar to Itadori Yuji with her heavenly restriction, improved by domain expansion, and having the strength to maim Nanami and Naobito, two grade 1 sorcerers at the same time, while Dagon is also free to move amongst the Shikigami onslaught. Dagon's combined attack potency with the Endless Swarm sure hit are more than enough to be win conditions for the special grade, especially considering none of the Demon Slayers have anti-domain countermeasures. Or do they? Naobito Zenin, while in Dagon's domain, is at first able to keep himself safe from the sure hit by employing Falling Blossom Emotion, an anti-domain technique that involves shrouding the user in cursed energy and immediately setting up a counter for any attacks that come into range. Maki's father, Ogi, confirms Falling Blossom Emotion can also be used as a sword technique, giving swordsmen a similar defensive ability that could be used even outside of domains. If we're to employ this logic onto the Demon Slayers and allow them to take full advantage of their high-speed advantage, what stops them from essentially chopping down the swarm of Shikigami as it comes forth? Muichiro pretty much does this similar canonical feat against Gyoko as we mentioned before, just slicing through a swarm of 10,000 fish in one quick motion. Now, if the Shikigami are more durable than the Demon Slayer's sword swipes, considering they're most likely cursed energy enforced, that will probably pose an issue, and the swarm can come from multiple angles and is so fast, despite Naobito using Falling Blossom Emotion to counter, he was essentially blinded by all the incoming sea creatures and purely left vulnerable for Dagon's physical attacks, who again is free to move while Death Swarm is in effect. Falling Blossom Emotion is also a cursed ability that covers the entire body with cursed energy, while the Demon Slayers are just cutting on instinct against invisible threats. This entire scenario is also assuming the Demon Slayers can uncover the secret of Dagon's domain, who doesn't need to outright explain to them the condition, as his natural power advantage wouldn't require him to use a reveal one's hand buff. And even if just one of the Demon Slayers is able to discover what exactly is happening, they would have to relay that information to everyone else. And there's absolutely no guarantee they all even end up close to each other on the island, depending on where they all are in relation to when the domain was casted. Now, Gyomei does have Transparent World, which may give him insight into the oncoming horde. Kanao also has Vermilion Eye, which should definitely at the very least be able to observe the subtle shifts in the air. That would leave Sanemi, and while Sanemi doesn't really have anything going for him, he also doesn't really have a give-up attitude, and would just be willing to start slashing his blade at the unseen attacks coming at him, or would eventually adapt just by watching the others. 2 out of the 3 Demon Slayers here have pretty viable options to observe the invisible Shikigami, so their biggest struggle would be Dagon's toughest Shikigami if they're summoned, because the high level of stamina that Demon Slayers have using the kind of training they endure as a base, and the long night of Infinity Castle to the final battle for Sundown against Muzan, all happening in one large stretch of time with no rest in between, the Demon Slayers indeed have that stamina advantage to stick out a long, drawn-out fight against Dagon. Of course, they'll be cutting down endless Shikigami the entire time, so their stamina would be dropping at a much more significant rate than normal. But the good news is, just as the Jujutsu Kaisen timeline transpired, the Demon Slayers will be able to phone a friend, and despite them probably having better allies to call, Zenitsu, standing in for Megumi, is the one to break into Dagon's domain expansion. The difference in Zenitsu's arrival for this fight would be Zenitsu not entering a tug of war with Dagon's domain, meaning Zenitsu's entrance could take the battle in 1 to 2 ways, and both honestly lead to victory for the Demon Slayers even before Toji makes an appearance. The first possible outcome is if Zenitsu breaks Dagon's domain by shattering it with a thunderclap and flash from the outside. If Megumi's assumption was correct, Dagon may not be able to employ a second domain, meaning Dagon immediately loses his advantage in battle, and the newly arrived Zenitsu would just make the initial outcome of a group beatdown on Dagon get accomplished much faster. Then there's the second possibility, where Zenitsu gets trapped in the domain with everyone else, and would have to adapt to the same Falling Blossom Emotion fighting style, just getting pulled into the long fight of attrition against Dagon. Eventually, Dagon, the Disaster Curse of the Sea, would meet his end at the hands of the Demon Slayers' teamwork. Having 3 to potentially 4 targets that Dagon will have to split his attention between, this also means Death Swarm will have to split its output levels, as originally, Dagon had his domain's technique set to 30% power for Nanami and 70% for Naobito, but because all 3 Demon Slayers will be somewhat equal threats to Dagon, the curse will have to cut its output equally at around 33%, 25 once Zenitsu enters the domain if it stays intact, meaning Dagon's attack advantage is only ever a third of its maximum, and Dagon's main body can only throw hands with 1 Demon Slayer at a time, so their speed would essentially create a scenario where Dagon's up against 4 Tojis that basically got attack debuffed. Speaking of Toji, once Dagon's domain is dispersed, similar to the original timeline, Jogo would arrive on the scene to wreak havoc, just in time for a revived Toji to also make his entrance, walking in opposite to Jogo with a bloody boar mask in his left hand. Now, unlike the original Shibuya incident, Jogo in this timeline would be accompanied by Hanami. Therefore, instead of Jogo attempting to execute the remaining Demon Slayers, he would just leave that dirty work to Hanami, as Jogo would mention something about Kenjaku wanting to introduce a brand new curse to the Disaster team. Jogo would leave as he can't waste time here. All the Demon Slayers would be confused, but before they could even ask, Hanami would engage them in battle. Meanwhile, Toji, baring his fangs at the strongest around, would briefly rip Gyomei from the battlefield right before the big group fight began, as Zenitsu, the new stand-in for Megumi, is most certainly not the strongest in this group, splitting everyone back up into 2 entirely separate fights. The first one, because I think it's the most interesting, will be Toji Fushiguro versus Gyomei Himejima, the strongest Hashira versus the sorcerer killer, a fight that's sure not to bore Toji in the least bit, as in terms of physical stats, this is probably the closest matchup in the entire video. So unlike Inosuke, Gyomei will have no problem matching Toji in speed. In fact, considering Gyomei's performance against Kokushibo and Muzan, 2 characters in the higher section of the scale, I would probably put Gyomei as the one with the slight speed advantage. Unfortunately for Gyomei, the bigger problem would be that Toji Fushiguro's durability would allow him to tank most of Gyomei's attacks with little to no issue, just based on Toji's previous calculations. Adding to this conclusion, Toji's attack potency would make every hit lethal damage for Gyomei if we are to use his previously calculated city block attack potency. The Transparent World and Demon Slayer mark again allow Gyomei to fight back, and very well at that, but the problem is, for every strong hit Gyomei lands that will brush off of Toji, every blow that Toji lands on Gyomei could just result in a murder if not properly avoided or blocked. Just using the sorcerer killer's assassination of Gojo as an example, Toji is not someone that wastes an attack, ever. Every haymaker, playful cloud stab, or whack is thrown with the pure intention of turning Toji's opponent to dust. In this timeline, Gyomei would fall, leaving nothing to stop the rampage of the Zenin clan's monster, which probably isn't good for the long-term living conditions of ordinary Shibuya citizens. But without focusing on the major nationwide ramifications of that, let's get back to Kanao, Zenitsu, and Sanemi versus Hanami, as this honestly wouldn't be too different from the base form Dagon fight. Hanami's massive forest conjuring technique does make the battle feel a little bit more grand scale, as it would hardly be able to be contained inside the building they were previously in. Hanami is still outpaced in speed, and considering Sanemi, Kanao, and Zenitsu would all be bloodlusted at this point, this battle would just become one long war of attrition again, as Hanami's durability very most likely surpasses Dagon's. Hanami canonically does have a domain expansion, but as of right now, it was only really revealed in a video game, and while I would probably say, based off what I've seen, it probably would be game over for the Demon Slayers if casted. Because it's not technically canon, let's just leave these characters in an entire arc-spanning fight with Hanami. Neither of the parties are able to land killing blows on each other. Fair? They're locked in a forever battle just to keep them out of the plot, which is beginning to progress now that Jogo has met up with Kenjaku at the lowest basement of the subway station. Kenjaku holds Ubuyashiki in prison realm as he laughs. Tanjiro Kamado finally arriving. Tanjiro screams out for Ubuyashiki to be released, but suddenly, just as quick as he made it there, his heart palpitates and Tanjiro falls over in convulsion. Kenjaku smiles while Jogo watches in awe as the cursed blood left inside of Tanjiro begins to twist and contort his body. Kenjaku activates his control over the Kamo blood inside of Tanjiro to manipulate the Demon Slayer like a puppet, essentially transforming Tanjiro back into his Demon King form from the end of the series, after Muzan attempted to possess Tanjiro. Now, with Ubuyashiki still imprisoned and Kenjaku's biggest threat turned into an ally, there's nothing stopping Kenjaku from starting the culling game. Kenjaku tells the newly crowned King of Demons to test its power by killing Jogo, as Kenjaku no longer has a need for the disaster curses. Jogo screams at Kenjaku as Demon King Tanjiro instantly rips the special grade out of the subway, throwing Jogo out into the open night of Shibuya as Tanjiro leaps out of the same hole to follow. Jogo, Disaster Curse of the Land versus Tanjiro, the new King of Demons. Now that we are dealing with the peak of Demon Slayer, Tanjiro, with all the high hypersonic speed, maximum building level attack potency, and unlimited endurance and regeneration potential now thanks to assimilating all of Muzan's power. And before anyone comments on cursed spirit blood not turning Tanjiro into a demon, let's use some imagination here. This is supposed to be fun. Demon Tanjiro would completely outstat Jogo in almost every category, only falling short in attack potency, which follows suit with the other disaster curses being large city block level. Jogo has the potential to summon a meteor that demolished a good chunk of Shibuya, and also has access to domain expansion. The Disaster Curse of the Land also excels in area of effect attacks, much more than Dagon or Hanami, as flames are much more lethal just based on contact. Unfortunately, while the massive range of Jogo's volcano attacks, fire explosions, and ember insects would make a perfect offense against an ordinary Demon Slayer Tanjiro, Jogo's opponent is Demon King Tanjiro, who is essentially immortal thanks to Muzan's almost undefeatable regeneration factor, meaning Jogo's massive power advantage falls dead on arrival with the fact any damage dealt to Tanjiro is immediately reversed. Even maximum meteor would most likely result in Tanjiro just repairing himself. Jogo's only hope would be catching Tanjiro in its domain expansion, as the Curse Spirit doesn't have many other win conditions. But because of Tanjiro's massive speed, trapping the Demon King in a domain becomes very hard to do. Jogo also has a pretty big glaring disadvantage, and that's his low durability, stated to cap out at even 1 of Itadori Yuji's Black Flashes, while Hanami survived 4. Jogo was still durable enough to withstand multiple of 15-finger Sukuna's casual attacks, including being ripped through a building and having his limbs cut off multiple times, which would put Jogo's durability somewhere around, if not comparable to, slightly above Demon Slayer's max building level, which do put him at risk of taking lethal damage from a feral monster like Demon Tanjiro. Thankfully, Jogo does also have high-speed regeneration himself, so Tanjiro would have to land multiple attacks on the Cursed Spirit to reduce Jogo's entire cursed energy total. Which brings us to Demon King Tanjiro's biggest downside in the fight, and that's the fact that no matter what he does, he has to get up close to Jogo to land that killing blow. So there is a possibility between one of those hits, if Jogo plays it correctly, he can get one over on the feral demon and trap him in domain. And if that's the case, Coffin of the Iron Mountain is a domain expansion with a sure hit kill effect that's set to reduce its target to ash, melting them in an instant from intense heat. And no matter how powerful Tanjiro's demon regeneration is, it should not be able to withstand complete cremation. And because the barrier will stop all chance of escape, unlike Jogo's other fire attacks, Tanjiro is forced to remain in the fire until Jogo finishes the job. Meaning, ultimately, the battle really comes down to who gets the killing blow first. Can Demon King Tanjiro destroy Jogo beyond regeneration and repeatedly keep himself out of the danger zone, while also repeating this action multiple enough times to wear Jogo's curse energy down to 0? Or will Jogo eventually catch Tanjiro inside of the Coffin of the Iron Mountain and put the immortal in a position where regeneration is no longer an option? In my opinion, it could go either way. I'd probably place the odds of the fight at about 7 out of 10 times win ratio, Jogo on the higher end. But let me know in the comments what you think. For the sake of the final battle, we'll say Demon Tanjiro loses but somehow survives and is on the verge of death. Jogo escapes Shibuya to fight another day and passes Mahito, who is fully charged up and hasn't had fun all day. The cheeky Mahito would be much more willing to take on Kenjaku for his betrayal than Jogo at this time, and coming across the new Demon King trying to put itself back together after being thoroughly roasted, Mahito would get an amazing idea. What better way to hurt Kenjaku than to steal one of his toys? By using idol transfiguration, the ability to manipulate the soul, Mahito would be able to rebuild Tanjiro and put him back together, but back the way Tanjiro was originally, before being overtaken by demon blood and turned into a feral beast. Tanjiro would wake up not remembering a thing that transpired after meeting with Kenjaku. However, Tanjiro would be back to full 100% stamina. Mahito doing all of this as a courtesy, but not for free. The curse spirit intending for the Demon Slayer to repay Mahito's kindness by helping him fight against Kenjaku. The enemy of my enemy is my friend logic. Tanjiro, who would of course be appreciative of the help and want to pay a debt of gratitude, would not be able to shake the smell of death emanating from Mahito. A raunchy, disgusting stench that would immediately send shivers down Tanjiro's spine. No matter how innocent and friendly this curse seems, Mahito is anything but. And as Tanjiro backs away slowly, a realization would hit him. Mahito smells not only of death, but he smells the exact same as all the transfigured humans Tanjiro kept running into. The transparent world filling Tanjiro in on the cold-hearted truth that each and every one of these Cronenberg monsters was human. Tanjiro easily identifying Mahito as the source of it all. Face to face with the curse, who, to be honest, probably killed the most people in Shibuya, there's no way Tanjiro could put aside differences and fight along this being of pure evil. Tanjiro can smell that more of his friends are alive and still fighting, so he can't waste time here. Tanjiro needs to save Ubuyashiki and find Kenjaku, but first he needs to deal with the enemy in front of him. Tanjiro's blood would boil with anger as he looks back at Mahito. All of these thoughts rushing by in the matter of seconds. Mahito, who just watched the boy go from confused to scared to on guard in quick succession, knows the look Tanjiro is giving him more than anyone. Mahito would laugh, saying it might have been a futile effort to try and get someone like Tanjiro to help. In fact, the look Tanjiro's giving Mahito reminds him of somebody, and Mahito's just got an itch to mess with people who give him that high and mighty expression. For anyone that was hoping for the Tanjiro Mahito buddy cop spinoff, I'm sorry. As cool as that would have been to write, I'm trying to be as true to the characters as possible. So, after there's no more room for negotiation, Mahito would be the first to attack. And with that, let's get into the final battle of the Shibuya Incident. Tanjiro Kamado versus Mahito, the Disaster Curse of Humanity. When it comes to Mahito, much like the other Disaster Curses, the special grade wins in every category but speed. Mahito is a unique case though, and that completely stems from his curse technique Idol Transfiguration. Much like his counterparts, Mahito has been shown using abilities like Soul Multiplicity, Body Repel to completely render entire city blocks destroyed and covered in transfigured matter. While these levels of attacks are limited to the number of humans Mahito has on him at one time, the curse was able to effectively fight against Yuji and Todo for an extended period of time without running out of stock. Mahito is also capable of landing Black Flash, which exponentially amplifies the curse's attack level to the power of 2.5 if he's lucky enough to hit one. Much like Jogo, Mahito is a great source of AoE attacks that, despite the speed disadvantage, can effectively keep Tanjiro at bay thanks to his shape-shifting ability and previously mentioned Soul Multiplicity options. Polymorphic Soul Isomer is another great way to add to Mahito's arsenal of warding the Demon Slayer away. All of this is explained to justify Mahito's capability of not only avoiding Tanjiro's higher speed attacks, but also enduring them completely due to their low attack potency. However, this is in fact also being generous to Tanjiro, because what hasn't been touched on is Mahito's Idol Transfiguration's secondary effect, which is the ability for Mahito to maintain the shape of his soul no matter how damaged the main physical body becomes, creating an almost damage nullifying effect, where no matter how much physical hurt Mahito endures, if his soul remains intact, the cursed spirit will always regenerate or come back unfazed, creating an anomaly of a fight where even if Tanjiro lands a decapitation, unlike the Jogo fight where he has to worry about the curse just frankly regenerating, which was already a problem, against Mahito, Tanjiro's attacks will amount to literally nothing, not even an overall loss of cursed energy for the curse to heal, since it didn't even take damage. Although I've talked up Tanjiro's water breathing and he Hinokami Kagura for its flexibility and adaptability in these types of situations, the major flaw is that Tanjiro needs to get close to hit his opponent. Even with Transparent World, Tanjiro's insane battle intuition and his sense of smell to determine the perfect route to the kill, any strides Tanjiro attempts to make against Mahito will ultimately just serve to put him in danger. Not just because Mahito carries enough attack power to obliterate the Demon Slayer with one good body repel, also putting on the table that Mahito could split Itadori's skull in one punch, and we've already talked about how high this man's durability is compared to Tanjiro's, but Idle Transfiguration amounts to an instant win condition just from one palm touch. On contact, Mahito can massively alter the shape of a person's soul, to the point Mahito can cause a person's main body to just spontaneously burst. And although there are certain cases of people surviving Mahito's soul alteration, it's usually because they instinctually defend their soul with cursed energy. And Tanjiro, who doesn't have any cursed energy, or realistically any kind of supernatural defense at all, is completely helpless to Idle Transfiguration. Even though Tanjiro is faster, the overwhelming odds Mahito holds over him keep Tanjiro at a disadvantage whether the fight stays long range or becomes close quarters. Now, I'm sure some of you will want the generous luxury of making Transparent World similar to Maki's extrasensory and grant access to soul damage for Tanjiro, but it realistically doesn't change anything though, as Tanjiro is still on the back foot due to Mahito's abilities in general. And even if Tanjiro did manage to land a good soul damaging attack on Mahito, one, the attack wouldn't be nearly enough to cause serious harm, as Mahito survives multiple black flashes from Itadori and still has stamina to fight afterwards, which is more powerful than anything Tanjiro could ever hope to muster. And two, after realizing Tanjiro could damage the soul, Mahito would play things much more cautiously. Mahito can grow wings, dig underground, hide or clone himself, and then let those clones distract Tanjiro to open the Demon Slayer up to an attack. And three, even after everything, any argument we make in Tanjiro's favor is immediately dismantled by self-embodiment of perfection, Mahito's domain. Domains are already the bane of Demon Slayer's existence, and by providing Mahito a guaranteed hit with soul alteration in an inescapable territory, Tanjiro can't even hope to overcome this. Mahito also has access to the 0.2 second domain expansion, which makes it even easier for Mahito to catch the Demon Slayer than Jogo. None of this discussion has even included the buffs Mahito would receive after transforming into instant spirit body of distorted killing, so I think we should just stop while we're ahead. The worst part is, when Itadori Yuji was failing, his friends were able to pick up the slack. However, even if Nezuko, the stand-in for Nobara, came to try and rescue Tanjiro, I'm not sure anything would change. Nezuko's exploding blood demon art is a great touch for long-range attacks, but otherwise not soul damaging. Not only can Nezuko be one-tapped as well, she is also at risk of being lethally wounded by Mahito's normal attacks. Even adding Giyu Tomioka to the mix, the closest Big Brother-esque character I can give Tanjiro to replace Todo, does not help. Self-embodiment of perfection is just the end of every conversation, honestly. Generally speaking, Mahito can die from being exhausted of cursed energy. He isn't completely immortal, and being generous, the Demon Slayer's great stamina would award them the ability to gang jump Mahito all night long, but the Disaster Curse of Humanity has too much of a handicap being able to turn the Demon Slayers to dust with just one palm touch. And with that, another anime series falls in the attempt to conquer the Shibuya Incident. Like Chainsaw Man before it, no matter how powerful or what advantages you may have, Mahito and Toji will completely level you. With no one left but the Hashira fighting Hanami, it's safe to say whether Hanami wins, Mahito just comes to help, or Toji manages to kill everyone involved, Ubuyashiki will remain sealed. Let me know in the comments if you think anything would have gone differently, or if I was wrong on any of my estimations on who would win. I sincerely appreciate you guys watching and letting me do another one of these videos. It's really fun. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.